What's going on, guys? It's Zach here. Bring you guys a fantasy football video, and this one will be going over the Week 9 start sits. So I'll be going over every single matchup in Week 9 outside of the Thursday night football game we just had between the Titans and the Steelers, and sort of going over which players I would be putting into my fantasy lineups and which players I wouldn't. I'll sort of give you my reasoning for everything and sort of give you guys just a general gauge in terms of what I'm expecting out of every single player. Hopefully, this can help you guys get your lineup set. But of course, if you guys have any specific start sit questions, feel free to let me know in the comments below. I love helping you guys get your lineup set, helping you guys get as prepared as possible to hopefully win as much as possible in Week 9. So should be a lot of fun. I really like taking a look at all these games. We got a pretty good slate of games. A lot of supposedly, or at least in theory, really low-scoring games. A lot of injuries to the quarterbacks across the NFL. So not a whole lot of super high-end production, but there's a couple really fun games sprinkled in here, and I think it should overall be a fun week. So super excited for this. Obviously, Sunday morning as well. I'll be doing the Sunday morning live stream where I'll go over any last minute injury updates. We'll go over any sort of last second start sit questions you might have. So make sure you guys just hop in there as well if you have any last second questions that you guys want me to answer. So that being said, let's just get into the first game here. Should be a lot of fun. Starting things off with the Dolphins at Chiefs. This game is going to actually be played in Germany, so do take note of that. The game's going to kick off at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time, 6:30 a.m. Pacific time. So again, as always, if with these like overseas games, if you guys don't have your lineups completely set, make sure you're either planning to wake up before the game start kicks off Sunday morning, or make sure you get your lineup as set as possible Saturday night before you go to bed. Set an alarm if you need to, but obviously a lot of people on the West Coast aren't going to want to get up at 6:30 like I'm sure I will on Sunday to watch football. That being said, for the Dolphins, I think it's pretty easy. You're starting everyone. You're starting Tua, Tyreek, Waddle, and Mostert. They're all auto starts. Mostert's been trending down just a little bit lately, but the touchdown upside's there. He is effectively in a timeshare in this offense. He's getting about 50 to 60% of the snaps each week at this point. You're playing him because of that touchdown upside to this offense and how explosive he is, but do keep in mind that I think Mostert's sort of trending down, and when Achane comes back, that could be a concern for him. I'd bench every other Dolphin, though. I'm not going to play either Jeff Wilson or Salvon Ahmed. Just don't see a world where this game ends up being high enough scoring that I want to be playing those ancillary pieces and praying for a touchdown. The Dolphins won't get up in this game enough that they can lean on those guys either, so I wouldn't expect that. For the Chiefs, Mahomes, Kelsey, and Pacheco, they're all getting to be in your starting lineups. Obviously, Mahomes and Kelsey sort of were a little disappointing last week. Kelsey obviously did fine as far as tight ends go, but he didn't do what he had been doing. And obviously, it was just a bad week in general last week for the Chiefs. They lost to the Denver Broncos for the first time in 8 years. Wasn't a good week for them, but I think they'll bounce back this week. The Dolphins are a beatable team. There should be a high-scoring matchup as well. The Chiefs are going to need to put up a lot of points. And then Pacheco, he's just been super involved. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has already been declared out. Jerick McKinnon's been missing practice this week, so Jerick McKinnon will likely be limited. They're going to have to give Pacheco a ton of work this week. You're definitely playing him. And I think Rashee Rice for the Chiefs is a solid wide receiver 3. I think I'm playing him in most scenarios. He's just a guy. He's obviously got real touchdown upside because he's in a really good offense. They're utilizing him in the red zone. I like Rashee Rice quite a bit rest of season as well, but I can see a world where you maybe have better options. And I'd bench everyone else. I'm not going to play any other Chiefs wide receiver. I'm not going to play Jerick McKinnon even with Clyde Edwards-Helaire out. I'm just not going to mess around with any of that. Next, we got the Vikings at the Falcons. For the Vikings, I think Hawkinson is the only player really on the Vikings side of the ball that I'm really excited about playing at all. And I think he's obviously got a lower ceiling this week as well. We're going to see Jaron Davis play this week for the Minnesota Vikings. They obviously traded for Joshua Dobbs. He probably won't be ready going into this week. So they're not going to have a very quality quarterback. They'll have like a sixth-round rookie quarterback at the helm. We saw him perform last week. He wasn't good in the limited opportunities he was given. He got strip sacked once. I expect this Vikings offense to struggle quite a bit. Overall, this should be a pretty low-scoring game here in Atlanta, and I'm not super excited about any of that. But Hawkinson, he operates close enough to the line of scrimmage that I think the quarterback play won't affect him as much as the other guys. Alexander Mattison, he's a desperation play at the running back position. He and Akers are effectively splitting snaps at this point. This offense is not going to be very good without Kirk Cousins right now, and the Atlanta Falcons are really good at defending the run. So I do have one league where I have to play Alexander Mattison, and I probably will, but I'm just praying for a 1 yard rushing touchdown here. You're probably going to get 12 to 15 carries for 30 to 40 yards, and it's just not going to be fun. Maybe you catch a pass or two. So expect a really low floor here for Madison, but I think he's going to get enough volume that you can play him. Same thing for Akers, and even deeper leagues. If you need to play Akers, you can, but in general, I'd probably prefer to be benching him. Addison, he's a low-end wide receiver 3 this week. He's been really good with the opportunities he's been given so far this season, but obviously he was really just sort of really building a lot of chemistry with Kirk Cousins, and don't expect that to carry over very well with the rookie quarterback. I think he's a talented enough player that you'll be able to play him down the stretch, but obviously I'm just not super excited about him this week in a tough matchup with a rookie quarterback. It's not something that I'm excited about. Bijan for the Falcons, he's obviously in your lineups. It was good to see him get in the end zone last week. He's a really good player. He's going to continue to get a lot of work, and you've got to play him. Drake London, I have listed here. He's a wide receiver 3 if active. We just got the report right before I started recording this that Drake London is going to be inactive this week. That means that really there's not a single Falcons wide receiver that I want to play. This should be a really run-heavy approach for the Falcons. They should be able to succeed doing that. They'll keep the Vikings scores down. Should be able to just lean on their running game and defense to win this game if you're Atlanta. So really not going to be a whole lot of passing game involvement here. I mean, if you're in a super, super deep league, I guess you could look at like Van Jefferson or Matt Collins. I wouldn't. I'm not considering either one of those guys. Kyle Pitts for the Titans, or for the Falcons, he's a low-end tight end one option, as is Jonnu Smith as well. He's not listed here, but the the tight ends are going to have to be very involved for the Falcons offense with Drake London out. They don't really have any pass catchers outside of the two tight ends and their running backs now. So you can play Pitts and Jonnu, but it's not going to be a super exciting option. And then I'm benching everyone else. I'm not going to play Algier. I'm not going to play Hollins or Van Jefferson. And it's just not an exciting matchup here for either quarterback either. Next, we got the Bears at the Saints. For the Bears, I think it's pretty easy. DJ Moore's the only Bear that I would really consider playing. We saw that Justin Fields is sort of trending towards missing this week, and then maybe can return in Week 10 with Tyson Bagent at the helm. It's just not something that's been super exciting. They're obviously 1-1 under him, but they haven't done a lot through the air. DJ Moore's getting a high enough target share that you can play him as like a wide receiver 3 or flex, but touchdown upside is not great. The Saints defense is really good. This game is probably a blowout. I'm not excited about any Bear outside of DJ Moore either. For the Saints, Alvin Kamara and Chris Olave, they're both must starts. I know Olave hasn't really met those expectations that we set for him before the season, but he still offered you a pretty solid floor so far this season, and sooner or later that boom week is going to come. He's being targeted down the field. One of those is going to connect here sooner or later. Derek Carr, he's a really solid streaming option this week as well. They've got obviously really good pass catchers in Olave, MT, Shaheed, Taysom Hill's involved. Kamara is basically a receiver for them. And this Bears defense, especially against the pass, is just brutal. So I think Derek Carr is a really solid option. Rashid Shaheed and Michael Thomas, they're both decent flex options. Sort of depends what you're looking for. If you want that upside, I prefer Shaheed. If you really just want like a safe 10 fantasy points in PPR, then Michael Thomas is your guy. So you can play both of them, but I think they're obviously very different kinds of flex plays. Taysom Hill, you can play him at the tight end position if you want to. I'm not super confident, though. He had one target last week with Juwan Johnson back, so he's really not operating as a true tight end with Juwan Johnson healthy. Obviously, he does get some really useful snaps and really valuable snaps near the goal line that utilize him effectively as a running back down there. It really just sort of makes things sad for Derek Carr and Alvin Kamara managers, but I think that you can play him, but you're just praying he finds the end zone. He did it twice last week. I wouldn't bet on it happening this week, but the Bears defense is going to give up a lot of points here, so you could certainly do worse. And I think if you just want to pray for a touchdown there, and especially in non-PPR, I think you can use Taysom Hill here. Next, we got the Rams at the Packers. This one's actually a really tough game for me to evaluate. Matthew Stafford's still questionable to play. It sounds like it's going to lead right up to game time for him. And I do expect Brett Rypien to play for the Rams. I don't think they're going to throw Matthew Stafford out after just injuring his thumb last week. That'll make Cooper Kupp like a low-end wide receiver 2 for me. Obviously, he's extremely talented. It makes him more quarterback-proof than most players, but we saw him. He's coming off of 2 straight bad weeks in a row. The Packers defense isn't horrible, and with Brett Rypien at the helm, I'm not super excited about Cooper Kupp. And then Puka Nacua, he's been missing practice. He probably suits up in this one, but he's just a flex play for me at best with Brett Rypien. Obviously, they both get elevated quite a bit, and I think I'd be willing to start both of them if they're active if Stafford plays. But if Stafford's inactive, I'd maybe be leaning towards sitting Puka if I can. Darrell Henderson and Royce Freeman for the Rams. They're both desperation plays at running back. Royce Freeman got the goal line work last week. Darrell Henderson's been utilized in the passing game a little bit more. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of opportunity for either one of them to score very often here. This is going to be a pretty low total game. The Packers' run defense, however, is really bad. So if you really want to get desperate there, you could consider playing Royce Freeman or Henderson. Henderson's probably more likely to catch some passes. Freeman's more likely to score. So do with that what you will. Aaron Jones, he's probably in lineups. It sounds like they're ready to unleash him, and he should be back to closer to full health this week. Should be exciting to see him there. I don't want to play A.J. Dillon, obviously. And then Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, and Jordan Love. They're all like low-end streaming options or flex options, depending on their position there. Dobbs continues to score touchdowns, but really do nothing else, which is really weird. Watson, he's running a lot of routes. He's getting the targets, but it hasn't really turned into any sort of material fantasy production. He's a talented player. If you want to keep throwing him out there, you can. He's a decent flex option. The Rams' pass defense is beatable, so you could do worse than Christian Watson. And then Jordan Love, despite the fact that he's really not playing all that well, he's throwing the ball down the field quite a bit, which is making his pass attempts more valuable. He offers some rushing ability as well, so if you want to stream Jordan Love, you can do worse there as well. But again, none of these guys are guys that I feel like I need to get in my lineup, and certainly no reason that I'd be super excited about any of them. Next, we got the Commanders at the Patriots. For the Commanders, Brian Robinson, he's a low-end running back too. We're continuing to see his usage just sort of not be where we want it to be. Obviously, last week was always going to be tough for him against the Philadelphia Eagles, so sort of willing to sort of throw that one out. But this is a game the Commanders could win, so we could see Brian Robinson get some more use on the ground. Potentially, he's obviously just a very game script dependent running back, so you can play him, but you're hoping he scores. Obviously, I wouldn't bet on it, but I have a lot of leagues where I have him, and am finding myself playing him with all these players on bye and injured. Antonio Gibson, he's a desperation play at the running back position in PPR formats only. I wouldn't want to be playing him at all, but he is catching a lot of passes. He's clearly their preferred pass catching running back, so if you want to use him, you can. Jahan Dotson, he's a decent flex play. He's coming off of 2 straight good games, but again, this isn't a game that I think the Commanders are going to need to throw the ball a ton in. We should see that passing volume come down, so it makes me not super excited about Dotson this week. Terry McLaurin, he's a solid wide receiver too. Obviously coming off of a down performance for his standards, not from a fantasy standpoint, but just from an overall NFL standpoint. He had 12 targets, only caught 5 passes. Had like 2 or 3 pretty bad drops as well, so McLaurin should bounce back from a performance standpoint. I think you can play him as a solid wide receiver too. Jamison Crowder, he's interesting in DFS for me and a pretty sneaky flex play this week. Curtis Samuel just got ruled out right before I recorded this. That makes Jamison Crowder the clear wide receiver 3 for them. He only played 23 snaps last week and still put up like 9 for 95 and a touchdown. Obviously, he's probably not going to score over 20 PPR fantasy points again this week, but he's a good player. He's been around the league. He's a seasoned vet. They utilize him quite a bit. He'll sort of just basically fill right in for Curtis Samuel, and if you need to play him in DFS or as a sneaky flex play, you can do that. Logan Thomas and Sam Howell, they're both solid streaming options. Logan Thomas continues to get those targets close to the line of scrimmage. I really like how involved he is with this offense. You could do a lot worse than him at streaming the tight end position. And Sam Howell, he's just been really solid so far this season. He's a top 10 fantasy quarterback on the year, and if you want to keep rolling with him, you can. For the Patriots, Ramondre and Zeke, they're both in play. This Commanders' run defense is absolutely brutal, and it just got a lot worse. They lost Chase Young and Montez Sweat in the same week. Obviously, that makes Ramondre like a must-start for me. I think he's probably like a fringe top 12 running back this week. And then Zeke, he's a low-end running back too. I think they both probably find the end zone this week. It should be a relatively higher-scoring game, as should all games for the Commanders going forward, just because their defense is not going to be good. I think that you could definitely be playing both Patriot running backs this week. Outside of that, Demario Douglas for the Patriots. He's an intriguing play at the wide receiver position. I would prefer him over guys like Jahan Dotson and obviously Jamison Crowder. He played 77% of the snaps last week. That was before Kendrick Bourne got injured. Bourne left the game with a torn ACL. He's not coming back this season. I want to have Demario Douglas on my rosters, and I think there's a role for him to potentially carve out a meaningful fantasy contributor here this going forward. And then Mac Jones, he could be a sneaky streaming option if you want to get really down and dirty with it. The Commanders' pass defense has been really brutal so far this season. The Patriots will likely need to score some points to win this game, and Mac Jones maybe scores 2 or 3 touchdowns this week. I don't know if I have the stones to play him, but if you really want to, or if you want to make it like a really sneaky DFS play, I could see a world where you consider doing that, but not super excited there. Next, we got the Seahawks at the Ravens. For the Seahawks, Ken Walker, he's a low-end running back 1. Obviously, we saw his usage sort of dip last week. He was banged up all week in practice. He did suit up, but he only ended up playing 25 snaps compared to Charbonnet's 31. That being said, though, he still touched the ball quite a bit. It was his first bad week of the season last week. I'm putting him back into my starting lineups again this week. I don't think there's a whole lot of question marks there, but I just do understand that it could be like a lower-end performance for Ken Walker because the Ravens' run defense is good, and the Seahawks could find themselves trailing in this one. Lockett and Metcalf, they're both low-end wide receiver 2s for me. I'm probably playing them both. It was nice to see Lockett finally have a really great game this last week. DK Metcalf has really yet to get going this season. He's yet to finish ahead of the wide receiver 21 in a given week. So I mean, he's still DK Metcalf. You're still playing him, but it has been obviously pretty rough for Metcalf so far this season. JSN, he's been really good the last couple of weeks. I think he's a deep league flex option. Like I said earlier, the Seahawks could be trailing in this one, so there could be a lot of passing volume for them. I could see JSN potentially having a meaningful game, but I'm not dying to start him by any means. I would sit both Geno Smith and Zach Charbonnet. Geno Smith hasn't really been great at all from a fantasy standpoint, or really from an NFL standpoint this season. He's regressed a little bit, even though the Seahawks are 5-2. On top of that, Zach Charbonnet obviously looked really great last week. I think he had 54 rushing yards on just 5 carries. He's obviously playing more and more, so he's a guy that needs to be on fantasy rosters. He definitely has the ability to potentially be a league winner down the stretch, so I want to hold on to him, but I'm not playing him this week. It's a bad matchup, and I need to see him take over a bit more of the role before I trust him in my fantasy lineup. For the Ravens, Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews, they're obviously must-starts. They're probably top 5 options at each position. You're playing both of them. Zay Flowers, he's probably in your fantasy lineup. Obviously, he hasn't quite popped the way that we thought he might after the really explosive first couple weeks for him. He's probably a must-start in PPR, but he's being targeted effectively at the line of scrimmage on all of his targets so far this season. It's really making him really limiting his ceiling just because he's not really being given the opportunity to stretch the field. I think he can do that. He'll probably have a breakout game here at some point, but if you potentially have better options, I get it if you want to look elsewhere. But I think Zay Flowers is still a solid wide receiver 3. Gus Edwards still low end running back 2, and I think I'd play him this week. But the Seahawks run defense actually has been pretty solid this year. They just added Leonard Williams as well, so this run defense should be legit. You're banking on a touchdown for Gus Edwards, but he's actually caught a couple passes as well over the last few weeks. I think you can play him, just understand that it's not going to be a super high end option. And then Justice Hill and the other Ravens pass catchers, I think they need to be on benches. Justice Hill's not involved enough. OBJ hasn't done a lot. Rashad Bateman hasn't done a lot. I'm benching those guys for sure. Next, we got the Buccaneers at the Texans. For the Buccaneers, I think Rashad White is actually a must start. He's obviously extremely involved as a pass catcher, and this Texans run defense is one of the worst in the NFL. You can lean on Rashad White in this game for the Buccaneers, and I think he'll be a really solid fantasy option for you guys. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, they're both players that are probably in your starting lineups. Mike Evans being a wide receiver 2, Godwin more of a wide receiver 3, but I'm definitely playing both of them. They've been good so far this season. Texans defense doesn't scare me by any means, so I'd play them. But I'd sit every other Buck. I don't think Baker needs to be a streaming consideration. Kate Otton's not involved enough. There's no other back there, so I wouldn't play any other Bucks this week. Dameon Pierce, he's trending towards missing this week. They're sort of considering giving him that week off to rest his injury. If you want to rule Devin Singletary out, I think you can. I think the matchup's obviously not great. The Buccaneers are really great against the run. Singletary would probably catch a few passes as well, and he probably will regardless of whether or not Dameon Pierce plays. You can play him. He should see 15-plus touches. I don't think they'd bring in anyone else near the goal line as well. I think you'd see Devin Singletary probably get that work, but it's just not a super great matchup. But I think Devin Singletary is certainly a decent streaming option if you want to go that route. Outside of that, Nico Collins, he's a solid wide receiver too. I'm playing him. Tank Dell, he's a solid flex option, especially in PPR. I know it's been a rough couple weeks here, but CJ Stroud struggled as well a little bit. The Buccaneers can get beat through the air, though, not necessarily on the ground. The Texans will have to air it out here, and I think Tank Dell probably has a bounce back week this week. Dalton Schultz, he's a decent streaming option at the tight end position. The Buccaneers just gave up a lot of fantasy points to Dalton Kincaid just last week. Schultz has been more and more involved the last few weeks. I know last week was a bit of a down week for him, but before that he'd been trending up. I think you can play Dalton Schultz, and then CJ Stroud, he can be streamed as like a really low-end quarterback streaming option, but I really don't love it. I'd prefer to look elsewhere, but I totally get it if you do need to play him this week. Next up, we got the Cardinals at the Browns. The Cardinals have technically not named their starter this week at the quarterback position, but it's pretty clear it's going to be Clayton Tune. We'll see Kyler Murray play next week probably. I think I might just sit every single Cardinal in this matchup. The Browns are an elite defense. They've got rookie quarterback Clayton Tune at the helm. It's just not something I'm excited about at all. Dave Mercado, who's a running back for the Cardinals that saw 20 touches last week, he hasn't practiced at all this week. He's got a foot injury. It sort of didn't surprise me because we didn't see him get any work at the end of the third quarter or beyond last week after getting all the touches beforehand. I think that honestly, he's probably going to miss this week, and we'll probably see Keontae Ingram. We saw them elevate Tony Jones as well. I think Keontae Ingram is potentially like a desperation play at the running back position if Dave Mercado misses, but you're just really hoping he volumes his way to like 8 to 10 fantasy points. I don't want to be playing him at all if I can avoid it, but there's one league I'm in. It's a 2-flex league. I have Monty, Kyron, and HN all out this week. In that situation, I'm considering playing Keontae Ingram this week if I need to. But that's the kind of situation that you really do need to be in to be even looking at them. Marquise Brown, he's a low-end flex option. Obviously, he's their clear wide receiver 1, but Clayton Tune's probably not going to get it done against this tough Browns defense. I would prefer to look elsewhere if you can. Trey McBride, he's super promising. I really love the prospect here. He's someone that I want to have on my roster right now, and if you don't want to roster a second tight end, you can play him this week, but the matchup's brutal. I don't expect a lot of production from the Cardinals offense, and I would prefer to look elsewhere if I can for the Cardinals, but if you want to play Trey McBride, you can. He could PPR his way to being relevant. Jerome Ford, he's a solid running back too for the Browns. I think you're playing him, even though he's been inactive or limited so far this week in practice. He's going to play this week. I think you can play Jerome Ford. Amari Cooper, he's a solid wide receiver 3. It sounds like Deshaun Watson's going to suit up in this game, so that does elevate Amari Cooper going forward. And Njoku, he's a decent streaming option, although we didn't really see him do a whole lot with Watson. His biggest games the last couple weeks came with PJ Walker. And then Kareem Hunt, I want to play him as well. I think Kareem Hunt and Jerome Ford both potentially find the end zone this week. They're both solid plays, and I could probably play them both this week. Next, we've got the Colts at the Panthers. Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss, they're both going to be my starting lineups. It really does feel like this could be the coming out party for Jonathan Taylor, although it just also seems like the Colts really just want to utilize both running backs. If that's the case, then I think they'll both have a really great game so far, a great game upcoming this week. The Panthers are one of the worst defenses in the NFL at defending the run. They really just can't do it. It's definitely a really plus matchup for this team. The Colts have been really effective running the ball as well, so it's a really great setup for the Colts, the running games, to be really effective this week. Michael Pittman, he's a solid wide receiver 2. Josh Downs is a solid wide receiver 3, although I will note that the concern here is that the Colts get up early running the ball, and they just don't really need to do anything else. I don't think the Panthers can really stop the run here. I don't know if they'll be able to score against this Colts defense either. So this game could actually pretty easily become a blowout in my opinion, and I think that could make this passing game be a bit just underwhelming for the Colts, and that's why I think you can stream Minshew, but it's just a scary proposition here. I think he might become unnecessary because they get up early. Maybe they run the ball 30 to 40 times this week, and I don't want to be playing to Minshew in that scenario. For the Panthers, I think I'm going to bench both running backs. Chuba would be the play that I play if you want to play one of the two, but he has looked good, but there's just no way I really am excited about it. He probably gets 15 touches. He wasn't efficient with those last week, and I don't want to be trapped again in this matchup. Miles Sanders, there's just no way I'm playing him until I see him get his rollback. He's clearly playing hurt. We'll see what happens when he comes back and maybe is at full health, but until then I'm just going to keep Sanders on my bench, although I don't think I would drop Sanders yet. I'd hold on to him for now. Adam Thielen, he's a low-end wide receiver too. Sort of didn't do this as much as he'd been doing prior to the bye last week, but he still got 11 targets, caught 8 passes. You're playing Adam Thielen. And then I just want to bring up Jonathan Mingo. I think this could potentially be his breakout week. DJ Chark's been limited in practice this week. He ran the most snaps. He had the most snaps of any single Panthers wide receiver last week. I'm really excited about him the rest of the season. He had 4 receptions for 60 yards. That's really solid last week, and I think we could see him take it up a notch even again this week against this bad Colts pass defense. So I've actually considered flexing Mingo in a couple leagues. I think he's a really great DFS play this week, and I think Mingo's definitely a guy that should be rostered right now. Next, we got the Giants at the Raiders. For the Giants, Daniel Jones should return, which does, in theory, upgrade this offense. Saquon Barkley, he's an elite option this week. You're legitimately getting potentially the running back 1 overall this week and playing Saquon Barkley. We saw how bad the Raiders were against both Jahmyr Gibbs and Craig Reynolds last week, so you're playing Saquon. I don't think I'm playing any other San Francisco Giant or any other New York Giant, not baseball. Daniel Jones, he's not a streaming consideration for me until I see that he's 100% healthy. Waller is going to be inactive this week. Wan'Dale Robinson will be the wide receiver you could consider playing, but I don't really want to go that route. I prefer to bench all the Giants wide receivers. For the Raiders, Adams and Josh Jacobs, they're both going to be must starts. I know it was a really rough week for Devontae Adams last week, but we're going to get Aiden O'Connell as a starter this week. That makes Jacoby Myers a flex option, but one that I'm concerned about. In O'Connell's 1 start, Devontae Adams had 13 targets. Jacoby Myers only had 4. That's why I say that Devontae Adams is still a must start this week, but Myers is more of a fringe flex option. I think it's a small sample size. Obviously, Aiden O'Connell's a bit of a gunslinger. They're going to throw the ball quite a bit in Las Vegas, and I think it can be fine there, but just understand that potentially you're dealing with a situation where Myers might be the odd man out here, so I'm not super excited about that. And then I wouldn't play any other Raider. I'm not going to play O'Connell. I'm not going to play Mayer. I'm not going to play Hunter Renfrow or any of that, so I'd bench those guys for sure. Next, we got the Cowboys and the Eagles. This one should be a really fun game. Dak is a really great streaming option, actually. The Eagles' pass defense is one of the worst in the NFL to this point, and the Eagles put up points as well, so the Cowboys are going to need to throw the ball, and I think they'll be able to. I think Dak's definitely a guy that I'm considering starting this week. Tony Pollard, he's in your lineups, but I'm growing more and more concerned. He just hasn't looked good. He hasn't broken more than 7 fantasy points in like a month. He is due for some touchdown regressions, so you're hoping he scores, but it's a really tough matchup against the Eagles. I get it if you potentially have better options, but I'd just be shocked if you're not starting Tony Pollard. CeeDee Lamb, he's a must start. Like I said, this Eagles pass defense is not good. We saw how elite CeeDee Lamb was last week. I think you're just going to stay in the fold with him. Brandon Cooks, you can flex him if you want. He's been more and more involved the last few weeks. Again, this is a plus matchup for the Cowboys pass catchers. You can play Brandon Cooks. Jake Ferguson, he's in play as well as a streaming option, although I do think I would bench Michael Gallup. He just is clearly the number 3 wide receiver in this offense. For the Eagles, it's easy. Hurts, Swift, Brown, Smith, and Goddard, they're all in your lineups. Nothing to really think about there, and then nobody else is a consideration. So this game's actually pretty straightforward for me. Next up, we've got the Bills and the Bengals. This could be the game of the week, pretty easy. It's on Sunday Night Football. I'm super excited about this game. It should be a lot of fun. For the Bills, I think it's pretty simple. Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, they're both obviously going to be in your starting lineups. Gabe Davis, James Cook, and Dalton Kincaid, I think they're all in your starting lineups as well. I'm super excited about Dalton Kincaid the rest of the season. He just looks like a really athletic tight end last week. Really talented player. I like his prospects going forward. And honestly, I should have made him a member of the buy low list this week. He's a guy that I'll definitely be targeting in trades if you need a tight end, because I think he could be one of those difference makers the rest of the season. The only bill that I'd even not really play is just Khalil Shakir, and obviously I don't think many people are playing him, but just don't chase the Week 8 performance. It was kind of scripted early on in the game. He got super involved, and then he didn't get super involved the rest of the game. So I don't think I'm playing Shakir this week, but if you want to keep rostering him, you certainly can. See if it continues. For the Bengals, Mixon, Burrow, Chase, Higgins, they're all going to be must-starts for me. They're poised to have really great matchups here. Should be a lot of scoring in this game. Super excited there. You can flex Tyler Boyd as well if you want this week. He outsnapped T. Higgins last week. Scored twice in a row. He's obviously just a known commodity, a guy that you can trust in your flex. So if you want to play him, you'll probably get about 10 PPR points. If he scores, you'll get 16. So if you want to play Tyler Boyd, you certainly can. I think there are a lot worse options out there, so he could be considered for sure. Next, we've got the Chargers at the Jets. For the Chargers, it's pretty easy. Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, they're all going to be in your starting lineups. I think I want to bench Joshua Palmer this week. He's clearly banged up. The Jets are an elite passing defense. They're not going to allow these ancillary pieces to beat them. And Joshua Palmer is just playing hurt. Maybe he doesn't even play this week. He didn't practice on Thursday. So we'll see what happens with him. But even if Palmer plays, I don't think I want to play him at all. Just a really bad matchup. I prefer to look elsewhere. Gerald Everett, he's an interesting streaming option. The Jets do give it up to the tight end position. If Palmer ends up being limited or misses this game, there will be extra opportunities to the tight end position as well. Keep an eye on Quentin Johnston. I think he really sort of started getting his feet under him last week. I don't want to play him this week. It's not a great matchup, like I said, for the wide receiver position, but there is going to be potential opportunity here for him going forward. So I don't think he should be on waivers at this point. He should probably be on some rosters. For the Jets, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, they're going to be must starts, and then I'm not going to play anyone else. There's Allen Lazard, nothing super exciting there. None of the other running backs are involved. I think it's only Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson going forward for the Jets. So that'll do it for the Week 9 start-sit video. I've gone through every single matchup in Week 9, sort of gone over which players should and shouldn't be in your fantasy lineups. If there's any player that I didn't touch on for whatever reason, maybe I missed him, just let me know in the comments. If there's anybody that you guys have any specific start-sit questions about, feel free to let me know in the comments as well. I love helping you guys get your lineup set and making sure that you guys are as set up for success as possible going into Week 9. So should be a lot of fun this week. I think we've got a lot of fun matchups, and obviously Sunday morning, tomorrow, given when you're watching this, you guys will be getting the live stream as well. 1 hour before the morning games kick off, I'll go over the last-minute injury updates, answer any of your start-sit questions live in the comments, and help you guys get as prepared as possible to dominate Week 9. So if you want to make sure you get access to that video as well, just make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're at like 925 subscribers right now. We hit a bit of a jump. Got a real shot to hit 1,000 by the end of the NFL season. Would be super exciting. Would be a super cool goal of mine to reach. So really appreciate all the support we've had. It's been super cool to see the channel grow, and I really appreciate everything. So thank you so much for watching. If you guys liked the video, give it a thumbs up. And that being said, I'll catch you Monday or Sunday morning, I guess, if you guys check on the live stream. So thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.